my name is Scott McCall and I am a youth instructor for Pratt Fine Arts Center. Let's go inside my studio and make some art today. Hello and welcome to my studio. My name is Scott McCall and I am a Pratt youth instructor. I'm also a painter and a graphic designer. So glad you could join me today. We have this really awesome project. It's a self-portrait where we're going to use a little bit of typography. We're going to use some writing prompts, different tools. You don't need any fancy equipment. You don't need to be a professional artist. You just need to be willing to show up and try something new. Should be lots of fun, and maybe we might even learn something about ourselves. All right, let's get started and go over some of the materials we're going to be using today. First up on our table is a roll of tape. Doesn't have to be any kind of special tape. We just need it to hold something very temporarily. I'm using masking tape today, but Scotch tape, duct tape, whatever you have will work just fine. We're going to use a flashlight, and I'll show you what that's going to be for in a minute. We're going to need a pen and a notebook, a pencil and an eraser. This is a really fancy little skinny eraser, but whatever eraser you have is fine. Pink pearl, something on the end of a pencil, it will all work. Today I'll be using some Sharpies. It will show up great on camera, but for you, you might want to use color. You might want to use watercolor. This would look awesome as an oil painting. I don't know, spray cans, whatever you do, whatever your media, you could go crazy with this. But today I'll be using Sharpie marker. All right, let's get started with our art project. So the first step is to create some way of holding a flashlight that's going to project a beam so we can create a silhouette of ourselves. I brought in an easel that I had in the studio, and that's going to be what I'll use, but you're welcome to use whatever you have. Maybe you have like a broom that you can kind of rig up and make it sturdy so it'll hold it. Maybe you have a big stack of books on a table. Whatever works for you. You guys are very creative. This is a great place to improvise. One of the easiest things that you could use is somebody like a little brother, a parent, sibling, grandma. Have her hold the flashlight, and that's probably the easiest way. But in case you don't have access to somebody to help you, this will work as well. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to cut a big piece of tape, and I'm going to stick that right here, and I'm going to get the flashlight somewhere about head height. It doesn't have to be perfect. And I'm just going to kind of tack that in place. And I've created a couple of strips that I have stuck here for me to support this process. And I'm going to just tape it up there real easy like that. And this will be our rig that we'll use to hold the flashlight to create our beam of light. All right, I'm set up and I'm ready to go. I've got an 11 by 14 piece of paper that I've mounted onto a drawing board and I put in my easel. This isn't a step you necessarily have to do. In my studio, this worked better, but for you at home, it might be easier just to go ahead, tape this right onto the wall. I encourage you to put a little padding with a couple extra sheets of paper behind it. That way if the wall has any texture, it won't pick up when you're drawing. I've put our lighting rig as far across the room as I possibly can. That's to create a silhouette that's going to be smaller. If it's too close, it wants to enlarge your silhouette, which depending on your piece you might want, but for mine, I want it kind of life size. The other thing I've done in the room is I've darkened the room by turning off the overhead lights. I have a light on camera, which I'm going to switch off. Now you can see a really strong silhouette here, which is exactly what I want. It's going to make my job a lot easier as I go to draw it. So now that I'm here, I'm going to kind of find a pose that I like, and I think for me head on works really well. If you want to do a profile, you might need help and get somebody else to come trace you while you stay really still. One thing you're going to notice is you want to be kind of close. It's going to give you a crisper silhouette, and it will be more kind of in scale to your actual body. So back here, kind of like what's happening with my bandana. My quarantine haircut is got some really nice gesture to it. So I'm going to go ahead and get started. And one thing I always do is I will put marks on both sides, and those will serve as kind of a reference, because inevitably I will move around a little bit, and if I have those marks on both sides, I can line myself back up. So I'm not too finicky about it, but there are definitely some points that I want to give more time and energy to getting right. One of those is the ears. And the reason that is, I find the ears really help kind of show what somebody looks like. You don't really think about it, but you really recognize the ears of people you care about and that you know and that you love. So if you can get the ears right, it will look more accurately like yourself, which is what we're going for here. So just coming around. One thing to note is I am working in a Sharpie because it will show up better as I'm recording, but you may just want to use a pencil, which will be easier to erase and change, and you can go and modify as you feel suits your needs best. But for me, this is what works. So there we go. There's my silhouette. And I'll show you another option in just a second. Okay, I'm back. This is an option if for some reason the lighting isn't working for you, you don't want to mess with the flashlight, your batteries are dead, whatever the reason, this is another alternative to how you can do this project without using a silhouette that's projected from a light source. And it's the oldest way of making art there is. Just come up with it out of your head. Many of us have an idea of what we look like, what our silhouette is. So we're going to just go ahead and freehand it here on a clean sheet of paper. So for me, I know I kind of have some broader shoulders coming up. We're going to put our ears in, coming up and around. A little bit of wild hair, the part. And we're going to try to keep some bilateral symmetry, which means we want things to kind of line up left to right. So you're going to come in here. And like that. So there's my silhouette. Another option I'll propose on a clean sheet of paper is that you might want to just maybe get really creative with this. Maybe it's not you as a human being. Maybe it's more like who you are as a spirit or as an animal. You can go crazy with this. I sometimes feel like an alien in this world, so I think maybe we'll give a silhouette with some antenna. Totally acceptable solution too. So whatever works for you, I encourage you to go with it. This is your project. Make it fun. Do what you like. Okay, so I have my notebook, I have my pen, and I have a watch that I'm going to use to keep time. So at the top of my paper, I'm writing things I am. So once the timer starts going, I'm just going to free write as many things that I am on this piece of paper. And I'm trying to create a really long list. So things that I am. I'm a dancer. I am Latinx. I am a poet. I am a ukulele player. I am a painter. I am New Mexican. I am a brother. I am a cousin. Just whatever comes into my mind, I'm writing down on that piece of paper. The goal is to keep your pen moving. If for some reason you come to a hard stop and you can't think of anything, just write blah, blah, blah and keep going. All right, so now the time's up on the first one. I'm writing things that I do on the second one. So I'll start the timer and I'm gonna think of verbs. What are the verbs that describe things that I do? I skateboard, I cook, I paint, I create. All the things that I think about in my daily life that I do, I'm going to write down on this piece of paper. It doesn't matter if it's perfect. You can put a noun. You might have something that just totally randomly comes into your head. Put it on the paper. Nobody's grading you on this. Nobody will ever see it. It's just for you as a reference for our next step in this project. All right, time's up. Okay, so here I am. I'm all set up. I have my silhouette. I have my list of words that I'm going to use to fill in my silhouette to create our typographic self-portrait. So the first word I did was the word dancer. And right out of the gate, you can see I'm thinking about what that word is and how it should look and how those things relate. So I picked a font that's really flowy, kind of rhythmic. I added a little embellishment under it that kind of almost looks like somebody leaping. So as you're going, you want to think about what are these words and how can you draw them or lay them out on your page so that they illustrate what the meaning of the word is. So the next word I'm doing is uncle because I recently had a new niece who came into the world a couple weeks back. And thinking about uncle, I want to be a really solid uncle, so I picked a really solid font that would really support that word and my aspirations for being a good uncle. So now I'm using the pencil and I'm just spacing out the letters. Sometimes it's worth kind of spending some time to just play around and make sure you have enough room to fit the word that you're trying to fit, because nothing's worse than getting to the end and trying to cram a bunch of letters in there. So this word I'm doing is New Mexican, which is in reference to where I was born, New Mexico. And the font I'm using is what we call a sans serif font. So you're going to see I'm going to add little lines to the edges of the letters right here. Those little lines are what we call serifs, and those come from when people used to carve letters into stone. They would put a little line at the end of the stroke, so that way the chisel had a place to stop. So that might help you think about how to use serifs when you're drawing your typography. So now I'm getting a little bit illustrative. I'm drawing a skateboard for the word skater, just to kind of help bring that word to life. I'm picking like a really radical, cool skater font, and then I'm spelling it with an 8, which is something skaters do sometimes. Coming up top, I'm going to draw the word painter, and I'm going to put it in an easel. And instead of little gobs of paint, I'm using letters to do the word painter. One thing you'll note is I'm switching back and forth between a normal Sharpie and a fine point Sharpie for when I need smaller details, like the hairs of the brush, for example. So the word I'm doing now is fixer. And for the X, I used a screwdriver and a wrench that were crossed. And I just kind of put all the letters in a big pile because it's art. It doesn't have to follow any rules. You can put the letters wherever you want, and that's what I chose to do here. So I'm illustrating the word cook with some eggs as the O's in the middle. Trying to figure out what the next word is. That's always part of the challenge. So I chose the word hiker, and I put it on a mountainside and did the letters as if they're hiking up the mountain. So seeing that I had uncle on there, I thought I might include other family relationships. So I put the word son, and I kind of had a play on the word son and put a S-U-N, son, underneath it. I put a bro as a shout out to my brothers. One of the things that I do is love, so I put the word love there. This one I had a lot of fun with. This is the word growing. And I put it, and I wanted it kind of rising up out of the ground, and then I started adding leaves and roots, and I even drew kind of the line of dirt and a little worm down in the dirt, showing that the word growing is coming up and out of the ground. For the word Latinx, I actually kind of borrowed the LA Dodgers logo for the LA, and then used a font that a lot of Latinx artists like to use. So almost done here, but there's some few spaces left, so I'm trying to find words that will fit in there. I like the word poet. Thought I'd put it in a book, but there wasn't enough room, so I tucked it in behind the painting palette, and I thought that worked really well. So there's that last little white space I'm going to fill in. So I chose the word cousin. I put the letters far apart because right now my cousins and I are far apart, but thinking about them and wanted to include that in my self-portrait. I'm putting uke player and drawing it in a little mini ukulele. Again, I'm using that fine point pen so I can get those little details in there. And then my last word is photographer, and I'm using the O in the word photo as the lens. All right, all done. I think it looks pretty good.